There ain't got no way, I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way, I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way, I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No,
Hi, good evening, and welcome to this edition of Breaking Out of Depression. I greet you in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It is indeed a pleasure to be here with you guys on this beautiful Tuesday evening. We are so thankful that we have this opportunity to build this community together and to share content, information, inspiration for transformation that would lead us to a much more better, more valuable, more fulfilling, and more rewarding life as we seek to build and grow and develop not only just community, but our relationship individually and collectively with God through His Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So thank you for joining on with us. We are glad that we can come on early despite the hiccups of the last time, but that's in the past. We are now in the present and we're going to stay there and enjoy every moment that we have of it according to the will of the Father. So join me in a word of prayer as we begin today's episode. Heavenly Father, indeed, it is a privilege and a blessing for us to come at this time on this platform and share the knowledge and the information that you've blessed us with, and you allowed us the opportunity to share with the people that need this information, God, that need to understand the challenges that they are facing in life with regards to mental well being, mental illness, mental health, and the many different aspects of depression that we all will face from time to time: anxiety, burnout, withdrawal. Dear God, we know that life sometimes can bring situations and circumstances that we did not cater for, that we did not see coming. But what we do know is that despite whatever those situations or circumstances bring in our lives, you are still in control. Nothing happens without your knowledge. Nothing surprises you. Nothing amazes you. Nothing unseats you. You are still in total and full control of what is happening in the universe. And so we thank everyone that has committed to making this a possibility and a reality. May your hand of blessing and continued provision be upon all the members of the LBW network and those who have other programs. That as we come together and continue to grow and build, that we would continue to succeed in reaching hearts, minds, and souls everywhere, that lives would be touched, souls would be moved, and hearts would come to the knowledge of the truth, recognizing you as Lord and Master, and accepting the responsibility of enjoying the opportunity for salvation. So we thank you. We give you praise, honor, and glory. We pray also for those who support in prayer and logging on to the program, that their lives would continue to be enriched and they would continue to build and grow and develop in a relationship with you according to your will. So let it be done. We ask all these mercies and blessings in the name of the living Christ with thanksgiving. Amen. Amen and amen indeed. Welcome, Gracie Vincent. Good evening to the panel. Boy, is she consistent or what? I think we're going to have to give her an award, Dexter, at the end of this season 2 of Breaking Out of Depression, for that level of commitment and faithfulness. Tell a friend, tell a brother, tell a sister, tell a family member, tell someone to come and join us on this particular broadcast this evening on Breaking Out of Depression. So I'm going to do my house cleaning at this time. Number one, a resource directory personnel is being built even as we speak, and you can have information to access the persons that have been on this program free of charge, at least in the initial stages. We will give you that information via email at lovebitsa@gmail.com, or you can send us a WhatsApp at 1-869-664-4365. Email us as lovebitsa@gmail.com, or WhatsApp 1-869-664-4365. I also will urge you to remember to support our other programs on the network: Iron Sharpnet Iron, Action Friday, Brooklyn Bible Study, Level Up Your Marriage, Bible Chat at High Noon. Every Monday, Men Talk with Brother Paul Blake, as well as our morning devotions and inspirations with our own Brother Dexter Honoré. And every other Saturday, remember to join our brother from South Edmonton in Canada with regards to the history of the churches of Christ around the world, Brother Roy Grano. Our theme for the year is Let God Do More for all of 2024. The scripture for the year, Isaiah 43:18 to 19, King James Version, and it says, Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. God's promise at the time, speaking through the prophet Isaiah to his people, even as they were in exile in Babylon for a period of 70 years. Our episode theme is B.O.O.D, Breaking Out of Depression: How to Sustainably Live Without Chronic Stress and Burnout. How to Sustainably Live Without Chronic Stress and Burnout, with Andrew O'Brien. And we're supposed to have him on in about 20 minutes or so. We will give you the thought of the week as we continue to progress with this episode. But I want to share some talking points from what we're about to hear with our guests in a little while from now. And I want to look at it from a scriptural perspective. Let me get that word right. Scriptural perspective. There are many men in the scriptures who would at one point in time have faced chronic stress, situations that would have had them in an uncomfortable position where their backs were against the wall and they had to do something to get out of that situation because it was not in their best interests to stay there. If we look at the beginning, the book of Genesis, the first man that I'd like to point out is the man by the name of Abraham. You would recall when God called him out of his father's household in Genesis chapter 12, God made a promise that through him and his seed, all nations of the earth shall be blessed. He promised him that he would take him to a land that is flowing with milk and honey, a place that he would leave for those who would come after him for generations, generations, and generations. But when we look at the experience of the man Abraham, we realize that even though he believed and he trusted God by faith to take him on this journey, not knowing exactly where he was going to end up, he found himself on several occasions having to deal with stressful situations. And the first one was having to go down to Egypt because of a famine on the way to the land that God had called him out to discover and promised to his generations. And faced with a situation where they had seen the beauty of his wife and was willing to take her away from him in fear for his life, Abraham lied about the status of Sarai, and instead of saying that she was his wife, he declared her as his sister so that he could protect himself. That was a stressful situation. However, even as he continued on the journey, taking it to another level, there came a time in Genesis chapter 19 when he had to do some pleading on behalf of the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, where he knew his nephew Lot had resided. And so it turned out that even before that, he had to take 350 or so of his servants and go and rescue Lot, who was under tremendous trouble because the kings who were at war decided to take him and all his household and all his possessions. And so Abraham had to go and rescue him out of that situation. But I think one of the things that really humbugged and bothered Abraham the most and caused stress upon him was that he was promised out of his very loins that he was going to have a son. And in so doing, he was beginning to think that the time would pass and the head servant of his household, Eliezer, would be the one that would be the heir to him because he knew that his wife, Sarah, was barren. And he was stressful. And God had to take him and show him the stars in the sky and the sands upon which he walked upon, and to let him know that you can compare me with these amazing and wonderful things. Whatever I promised to you, Abraham, I will bring to pass. But unfortunately, Abraham did not wait. That stressful situation led him to listen to his wife, who said to him, I will give you my Egyptian handmaid, and she will bring forth a child for me. She was taking this very personal. You see, in the time that they lived, if a woman was found barren, it was considered as a curse. And that in itself was also a stressful situation for Sarah to deal with. And so Abraham probably thinking to himself, well, I was made the promise. Sarah, my wife, is barren. So maybe this would make sense because I'm beginning to lose hope. I'm frustrated. I'm stressed out by this situation. When is this going to happen? And besides, you were thinking, I'm getting older. And could you imagine this? Not until he was actually 99 going on 100 and Sarah was 90 that it actually happened. And the reason why it did not happen before is because the season and the timing was not right. You see, God has a season and a timing all of His own, and we have to recognize that. And sometimes we'll find ourselves out of sync with God because our thoughts and our ways may not align themselves with the value that God has about His thoughts and His ways. Isaiah 55, 8 and 9 tells us that our ways are not His ways, our thoughts are not His thoughts. As high as the heavens are above the earth, so are His thoughts and His ways above ours. But if we find ourselves in alignment with God in terms of His promise, trusting and believing and hoping and depending upon Him, knowing fully well who He is and what He can do, because He is a deliverer in two senses. One, He can deliver us from any situation and every situation because He has the resources, He has the capability, He has the ability. And two, whatever He says and He promises, because of the level of integrity that He has, He will deliver. Beyond the shadow of a doubt, without fail, God always stands behind His word to bring it to pass. But the level of the stress that Abraham and his wife Sarah felt caused them in that moment to lose the faith. And even when the angels came and bring them the good news, they both laughed, thinking, at this age, how is that possible? See, they were looking at their physical shortcomings, but not looking at God's ability to overcome whatever shortcomings they had. So they were aligning themselves with their physical shortcomings, but not by the faith they were supposed to have and expected to have in God to make it happen. And sometimes we can find ourselves in similar situations. And when we do that, we are succumbing to the level of stress that we may feel in our lives, thinking that we can find a solution. But sometimes, in finding what we think may be the solution, we can create another problem for ourselves. And if you know the story well, that is exactly what happened when Hagar became pregnant and snubbed Sarai. And then eventually, when Ishmael was born, there was a problem with the true child of promise. So you see what happened there? They took matters into their own hands because of the negative pressure of the stress that they were feeling. And what they thought would have been the solution turned out to be a huge problem. So we have to learn a lesson or two from that. We cannot afford to deal with our situations and our circumstances based on our limited resources and what we think might be right and correct for the situation, because that in itself is also limited. We cannot see what God can see because He has the ability beyond all the possibilities to see what we can't even imagine. And the scripture tells us, to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. Ephesians 3:19 and 20. So what are we doing? Are we finding ourselves embracing the possibility that God can do all things, and it is based on our ability to trust in Him without doubt, without fail, without reservations, without fear, but with total commitment and deep conviction that this is what God has in store for me. And at some point in time, it will come to pass. It may not be in the time that I think it will come to pass. It may not be in my timing, but as long as God is in control, I will trust Him because His timing is perfect. It is exquisitely perfect. That's the God we serve. And sometimes we can learn that lesson either the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is searching the scriptures because the examples are there for us to know and for us to follow. The hard way is if we take the highway of self, if we take the highway of reaction to the stress and decide, I am going to take care of this. And then when mess happens and things go awry and we can't control it anymore, we come running back to God. And sometimes it's too late. So we could avoid all that unnecessary stress. We could avoid all that unnecessary suffering by just learning to trust the Lord with full confidence, with patience, even if it requires long suffering. Because sometimes He will allow these situations in our lives so that we can build the muscles that we need to build in our spirit. And I want us to understand that and grasp it in the reality in which God loves us so much that He's constantly working on our faith, our ability to believe in Him. Because you see, God understands the challenges that we face because we are in a different realm. We are in the realm of the physical more than we are in the realm of the spiritual. We spend more time focusing on physical things. Most of us have to work. We have other commitments. And as a result, we're going to find ourselves caught up in the things that may sometimes take us away from the realm of the spirit. But that does not mean that God is in the same realm as well. He is so much more better off than we are because he has the ability, and as I said before, the resources, his very character is filled with so many possibilities that we can't even begin to see or imagine. And therefore, we must learn to consistently place our trust and our confidence in him. So, Abraham and Sarah learned the hard way. But when Isaac came, could you imagine the joy? Could you imagine the relief? Could you imagine the release? Could you imagine the feeling? Even though they did not anticipate it because they laughed. They did not really believe. They were not sold on it. There was no deep conviction about it. They did not rest in the assurance that God said it and it would happen. No, they did not do that. So we have to be careful that we are not like Abraham and Sarah in that regard when it comes to our personal lives. We need to buckle down and lay our foundation on the place that God has given us, and that is His Word. And His Word is His integrity, and there is no failing, no shortcoming, no missing out with His Word. It shall come to pass. As I said before, maybe not in the season or the time that we anticipate, that we expect, but if God said it, it will come to pass. There's no if or buts or maybe about it. Listen, the weatherman will not always get it right. As a matter of fact, he can't predict. He's making a forecast. But that can change. Your banker may disappoint you from time to time. The person that is doing all the trading on the stock exchange, on bonds and online, they can fail too. The markets suddenly crash without warning. It happened many times before in history. Out of the blues can come a pandemic like COVID-19, even though some people knew about it before. But that's a story for another time. What am I saying here? I'm saying that there are many times in life when we will have disappointments. We will have situations that would come to us that we did not see coming, that we did not expect, we did not anticipate, we did not prepare for. Especially as Christians, it's going to happen. But when they happen, who are we going to keep our eyes focused on? Are we going to look at what is happening in the storm, in the circumstance, in the negativity of the situation? Or are we going to look at what God is saying about us in His Word, despite the presence of the challenge or the mountain or the storm? However you choose to describe it, it may be something that can create some level of chronic stress in our lives. But how we deal with it and how we manage ourselves as God's people in the midst of those situations, that is what matters the most. If we look at the man Job, it would make us at times think, well, whoa, question, how could God allow something like that to happen to a man like Job, who was upright in all his ways and probably the most perfect man upon the face of the earth at that time? There was no fault in him. Yet, because Satan came and challenged the ability of Job to remain consistent and committed and convicted and aligned to the values that God had given unto him, it was a challenge. And God took the challenge. And He gave him permission to touch the things that he had. Because Satan said, if you just remove your hedge from around him, he's going to curse you to your face. That was the challenge. Now, at the end of the day, when I sit down and I think about it and I realize, wait a minute, God is not a gambler. I want you to understand what I'm saying here. God is not a gambler. But what God did was He placed His ability to believe in man to a certain extent in the hands of Job. You know why? It had to prove a point to Satan that despite all those things that he had earned, had taken away from him, the most important thing that mattered more to Job than anything else was his relationship with God. And God knew the man's heart like he knows your heart and mine. And so at the end of the day, whatever we are going through, what we have to understand is that even though God is allowing this to happen to us, it is not against us or for us, but it is to prove his ability to sustain us in the midst of all these things. And in addition to that, for us to prove to ourselves that our faith in God can take us to a place that even though the storm is happening all around us, we can still find that peace in God because of our ability to believe in his ability to sustain us in the midst of the storm. That is what made the difference with Job. So even though everything was taken away from him, including his children, and his health was challenged, and he was brought to a very low and unseeable place in society, scraping himself from head to his feet with boils, seeking comfort that he couldn't find, even in the midst of his deepest, darkest chronic stress and loss and disillusion, he still had the courage and the faith and the deep conviction to say, "The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." And even though his wife challenged him and said, "Why hold on to your integrity, Job? Why don't you just curse God and die?" He told her, "You speak like one of the foolish women. Isn't this God who is able to give us all things? Can he not decide to take it away as well?" Yes. I'm not saying that we are going to have a Job like experience, but what I'm saying is that we need to have a Job like attitude, a Job like mindset, a Job like heart set towards whom? God. Why? Because we know beyond the shadow of a doubt, like a wheel in a wheel, that he loves us. He cares about us. We are his chosen people. We have been called out of a world of darkness into marvelous light for a reason. God wants to use us to bring his honor and glory to the wider world, that they would know who he is. But we have got to be that beacon of hope that shines in the midst of the darkness that now exists in the world. We must run to the mountaintop and let the world know that despite what we are personally going through, God is able. He is good. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He will not fail. He will not fail. And that is what took Job through his hardship. And if we understand what it takes to have that kind of faith, belief, and hope, and deep conviction in the God that we serve, when the storms come and the trials come and the tribulations and the persecutions come and the chronic stress arises as a result, we would know where to go to seek our comfort. Not in the things of this life. They are temporary. They will fail, they will fall short, they will diminish. But God's mercy and his grace and his love is everlasting. He will never fail us. He will never fall short of what he is able and capable of doing. We can rely on and depend on him for that. So, as I round off what I'm saying, I am hoping that our guest, Andrew, will have no problems like the last one in coming into the studio as we look forward. I just want to remind us of the theme for this episode. It's how to Sustainably Live Without Chronic Stress or Burnout with Andrew O'Brien. And we expect to see him in the next 3 minutes or so, right here, live on this episode of Breaking Out of Depression. Remember, if you have any comments or questions, we'd love for this to be an interactive and communicative episode. Please share your thoughts, share your ideas. Let us know what makes a difference to you. Let us know what you want to hear about. Let us know what the topics are that you would be interested in. How can we help you? How can we make a difference in your life in terms of how you deal with mental wellness? Hold on a second. Let me just plug in my electricity. Okay, great. So I just had to use my backup there. So the reason why it is important for you to communicate with us is that we need to know how we can structure these programs. We don't want to do them by guess. Although we can take the lead and we can, in time put things in place so that we have a fair understanding of how we can pace ourselves. But still, this is not about us. This is about you, the people in the community. This is about you who are looking on and who are listening to this program. It is important that you communicate with us and tell us what are the things you would like to hear about? What speaks to you? What are the things that you seek clarity on, the value that you seek in terms of the information that we share with you? Can we do more? Can we do better? Is there something specific that you'd like us to dwell on for a longer period of time? All these things are extremely important and vital to us. So I can see our guest is live with us in the studio, and I'm going to ask Dexter to bring him on in a minute. But before I do that, I would love to introduce him by telling you about what Andrew O'Brien does. Now, also, remember, he is here to share his expertise, his knowledge, his information, and his experience. So please, let's be proactive. Ask questions, make comments, let him know what your thoughts are, and he will respond and correspond accordingly in the appropriate time and manner. So, here we go. Andrew O'Brien is known as the mind blowing coach, and he's the founder of the Mind Blowing Coach, a business with a sole mission of boldly and authentically partnering with individuals and organizations in eliminating whatever chronic stress is plaguing them so that they can live life with more meaning, purpose, energy, health, and joy. In addition to the offerings available for adults, including virtual and life coaching services, he does individual workshops and group workshops. The Mind Blowing Coach also partners with organizations both in person and virtually that are looking to incorporate impactful health and well being events through presentations, workshops, classes for their employees, and those that are specifically centered around the topic of stress and stress relief. So, without further ado, let's welcome live in the studio on Breaking Out of Depression, Andrew O'Brien, the mind blowing coach. Hey,
Hello. Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me here.
yeah, Andrew, thanks for being here with us. We appreciate you and we appreciate the opportunity that you're taking to be with us here on Breaking Out of Depression. So, let's get right into the meat of the matter. Tell us a bit about Andrew O'Brien, where you came from, how you came to be called a mind blowing coach, and what made you feel that you had that desire to help people live a better quality of life, especially dealing with chronic stress.
Yeah. So, where do I begin?
From the beginning.
from the beginning. Yes. And so what I'd like to share
Hmm.
in connection with my own journey is that I had always struggled with managing my own stress. I always felt like I was just on a hamster wheel. I couldn't get out of it. I always felt fatigued. I always felt down. I always felt as though like this it's just heavy, like overwhelmed, and I just felt like I couldn't get out of that cycle. Uh, it kind of like ebbed and flowed, of course. It wasn't always a consistent kind of like that, but in reflecting, I'm very much into self-reflection, and what in addition to the science that I've compiled in these 10 ways that we can certainly get into later. Uh, One of the biggest pieces of learning that I have uncovered for myself is that just to kind of put it out there, I'm a gay man, and growing up as a gay kid in a straight community was an experience that interesting. It was an experience that taught me how to protect myself. It was also an experience that taught me how that protection, that self-protection, can also lead to my chronic stress and my burnout. And so if I may share the like what do I mean by that self-protectiveness? We all have a brain, and our brains are really, there's a part of that brain called the amygdala, and that amygdala is constantly scanning for threats. And that amygdala does not know the difference between a real and a perceived threat. And so one of the things that my brain saw growing up, uh, in connection with this whole gay kid trying to fit into a world that looked very different, that acted very different than me, it's it it basically it's a space where I saw one of the most salient things that I saw was on the media a few different times. And what I saw was other gay kids either getting beat up by other people or getting killed by other people. And I don't want to make light of the situation at all as I'm trying to describe my experience. Horrific what I saw. And I'm not taking anything away from that. However, that wasn't happening to me directly. And that's what I mean about the difference between perceived and real threat. So my amygdala in that brain of mine saw what was happening on the media and put me into high gear, put me into self-protective gear. Even though it wasn't directly happening to me, it was telling me, okay, how do I survive? How am I going to survive this? And some of the ways in which it told me to survive was to not be myself, was to hide myself, suppress myself, to keep myself small. And that ultimately in turn to kind of like some experiences of anxiety. I was biting my nails all the time. I actually wet my bed. I'm being very TMI right now, and I hope that's okay with the listeners. But I actually wet my bed for many years. I was pretty old by the time that stopped. My parents were trying to, on both of those ends, were trying to do things to help things out. But at the end of the day, I was hiding myself because that's what my brain was telling me to do. In order to live in this life, I can't be who I am. Uh, and so, going back to the teachings, yeah, of course, uh, I can learn how to do that. I can hide myself. One of the ways in which I did that was to. Uh, I wasn't super athletic at the time, and so in the school community that I was growing up in, there was really two paths that you can take. One become the athletic person and shine in that way. The other one is like be the intellect and go the nerd route. And so I chose the nerd route, and I also believe that my brain taught me to go in that direction because I could actually do that for the most part on my own. Like I didn't have to connect with other people. I didn't have to collaborate with other people. So I really studied hard after school. I wasn't really doing anything for extracurricular. I was just coming home and hitting the books, and that's that's how one of the ways in which again my brain told me to protect myself to fit in and to be recognized in that way as opposed to the gay way. And so, as such, I put a lot of pressure on myself to get those straight A's. When I didn't get those straight A's, negative self talk built and built and built, and that continued on. That continued on down in my career. Uh, I I don't have the feelings anymore, but of course, like I wanted to get into an Ivy League. Didn't happen. And of course, I beat myself up on that end quite a bit. Um, and the college that I went to, phenomenal, very well reputable school. And if you ask me today what I think about education, that's a totally different topic. Like I don't think that you actually need a degree to be able to shine. But anyway, that was my path, and that's what I told myself that I needed to do. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and it continued into my work, and and that's coupled with once I was able to kind of get over the nail biting, once I was able to get the bedwetting under control, I then started to experience different physical stress symptoms, and uh, everything from I don't know if you've ever had an eyelid twitch. Uh, that started for me. It was periodic. It was temporary. Maybe it was about a few days from time to time. Growing up, I didn't think much of it because I really wasn't immersed in the work that I do now. Uh, so I was just like going with the flow. I was like, maybe I just need to catch up on more sleep, and it would go away, and it did go away after those few days here and there. But then there was one year, literally one year, where my eyelid twitched incessantly, and no matter how much sleep I got, no matter how much anything I got, it was just there. So that was, once I put two and two together there, um, I was like, something's up here, and coupled with again TMI, sorry audience, a bout of hemorrhoids, 100% stress symptom, and feeling down. As I worked with a therapist, of course, for a while, and all of these things built and built and built until it came to a point where I just told myself, I'm like, life can't be this. Life can't be just me experiencing like one stress symptom to the next, constant self pressure, constant negative self talk, uh, and and I wanted to do like I needed to make a change. I needed to do something different, and uh, I would say my life started to take a turn for what I would consider better when I attended an event, and this event was very much like a holistic wellness type of event, very much science based. I'm very much into the science, and every part of the work that I do, it's founded in science. I'm a firm believer in supporting folks with with that, as opposed to just kind of like willy nilly stuff, grabbing stuff out of the air. Uh, but this one particular event seminar provided a lot of the science that I now have compiled into what I connect with either individuals or organizations on, and then building on top of that different pieces of science that I was like grabbing from my own experience, my own training, and put this together in a way that I found to be simple. Because one of the struggles that I had in doing this work is that uh, it was piecemeal. I would get a piece of science here and then a piece of science here, and to me, it wasn't just all connecting. I wanted everything in one spot, and that's what I worked to create from that. How we can manage our stress response system in a way that we can avoid that chronic stress piece, in a way that we can avoid that burnout.
Back to that particular aspect with regards to the ability to manage so that we don't reach the point of burnout. I think that is extremely important. But there are terms that we use sometimes, and I like to take the opportunity to explain. You mentioned the amygdala. And for folks who may not understand, that particular organ is like an almond shaped nut that resides in our brain, and it helps us to decide whether we want to run, freeze, or fight when we are faced with a situation that brings a certain level of not just stress but threat to our safety and well-being. So I just thought I'd just get that out of the way. The
Hmm.
other thing that I observe out of what you're saying, Andrew, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, is that it seems as though there are times when you could be experiencing symptoms of stress that could lead to withdrawal, but you may not know it because you lack the knowledge, you lack the necessary scientific information.
Hmm.
And sometimes that could be itself stressful, just knowing that you're feeling these things and you're trying to figure out, okay, so where they're coming from.
Hmm.
But how do people find a way internally, and we can look at this in so many different ways, to gather the strength? And I believe that we are all blessed with some level of resilience, Andrew, so that we can manage ourselves so much better that even though the stress is present, it will not take us to a place where we cannot control how we respond to it.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. And yeah, that's what it's all about. Because we are human, and because we have this amygdala in that brain,
Hmm.
and because we have a stress response system, we're never going to live without experiencing stress. It's going to happen. It's a part of the human condition. We want it to happen. Because there's a couple of kinds of stress that I that we would consider very positive. One is actually that positive stress. Uh, it can be used as a motivator to achieve what you want to achieve, and things of that nature. Uh, and the other category that I would consider positive is in the case of a real threat. In the case of a real threat, we want our brains to tell us what to do, to your exact point. Do we run? Do we fight? Do we freeze? Um, before I go on, just fun fact as well, just from a brain science perspective, that amygdala, when our stress response system is activated and stays activated, in other words, we don't um, manage it so that we can get back to that homeostasis state. Uh, MRIs have actually shown that amygdala will expand in size. And as that's expanding, there's actually two other brain parts that are shrinking in size. And just real quick, the prefrontal cortex, which is in connection with logic, rationale, positive emotions are stored there. The hippocampus as well, uh, which is also connected to learning, memory, positive emotions. Those, right? Those two parts will actually shrink down in size if we're in that activated stress state well, exactly. And so it's no wonder, I tell who I work with in this capacity that we feel the way that we do when we're in this chronic stress and burnout state, because it's physiological, it's biological. And just as we're in that state, I can go through the science, the 10 domains, I call them, to take our power back and work to get those brain parts to their normal sizes so that we can go back to living in and out of that homeostasis state as a human. To answer that second part of your question, I think it might almost make sense to start going through those 10 domains, but I will pause to see if you were looking for, if I'm not picking up that question correctly.
Ourselves, so that, as I said before, even though the chronic stress is present, and in addition to that, it may not be exactly as chronic as we think.
Mm,
It can be deceptive. I know that from personal experience. But what are the mechanisms that we can use to manage us, the individual that has to deal with the stress, so that the stress does not be the dominating factor
mm.
and we have a choice in the matter?
Yes, yes, we have agency, 100%. And I also just want to before before going into it, what I love to uh, the foundation that I like to lay before getting into this is the foundation of self-compassion.
Hmm.
I say that self-compassion piece because if any you are not proactively managing it, it's a very normal thing to experience. It's not fun to experience. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. Uh, but it's normal. And hopefully, my goal in being here tonight is to uh, enable you to walk away with something that you might not have known before, as a way to take a step forward in taking that power back and learning how to manage our stress response more proactively. Uh, because let's face it, we are in a much different state of being, culture, uh, politics, economics, religion, you name it, you have it. We're in a much different space today than we were during the cave people times. And the folks during the cave people times did not have to proactively manage their stress response, because what they experienced from that real threat perspective was far and few between, and they had an opportunity to get back to homeostasis just organically, naturally. Our brains have not yet evolved to keep up with the influx of information that we're exposed to, and as such, a lot of that information, mind you, is negative. Our brains are going to see it as negative, uh, and it goes back to that real person versus perceived threat, and the amygdala is just like taking everything in because it doesn't know the difference between real and perceived, and so from that perspective, again, that self compassion piece, we are in a much different state, and uh, this becoming proactive about our managing our stress is becoming more key and more critical, so that we can live life with more purpose and more energy and more meaning. And that's what it's all about. So yeah, so now I could get into the 10 domains. I could talk about this stuff forever. So just cut me off if I'm ever like talking way too long.
Well, here's what you can do, Andrew. You
Yeah.
can look at the first two,
Yeah.
and then I have something that I want to show you, and you can do some commentary on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All
Yeah.
right. So I'll start with the first two. I'll stop at the end of the second one.
Hmm.
Just also a disclaimer, a preface here. The order in which I go, there's no order of importance to these 10 categories. They're all equally as important. It's all about optimization, no state of perfection as a recovering perfectionist. There's no state of perfection as it relates to these 10 domains. It's all about optimization. And there's not one more that's important to the next. The other piece that I want to share is that all of these 10 domains apply to us all as humans. How we then apply them into our life, that's where it becomes individualized. That's where it becomes personalized, because we are different, and we're not we may not all agree on like how we apply one of these domains, compared to the person next to you, and that's totally fine and okay. Um, so, domain number one, it's all about that oxygen, folks. Breathing, and not just breathing. Breathing deeply is that operative word there. Breathing deeply, consistently, regularly. I'm throwing myself into this category of people who I guarantee you lose the sight of that day in and day out. Right now, as I do this, I'm not breathing deeply. I'm shallow breathing, and I'm sure that nervous system is and that stress system is like involved and such. But the importance of breathing deeply, our brain actually uses 20% of our total body's oxygen supply. And even mild deprivation in that can lead to feeling fatigued, foggy. Uh, and breathing is such a powerful way. Tough to stay focused on the deep breathing throughout the day, 100%. But such a powerful way on bringing us back to center, bringing us back to feeling grounded. And there's many different breathing techniques out there. I'm not going to go through all of them whatsoever, because there are a ton. I'll just encourage you to do a Google search if you're interested. There's a box breathing method. There's the 4-7-8 method. There's a soft belly breathing method. All of the methods, there's science behind, and it's really just finding out what method works for you. And the only thing that I will recommend, as if this is something that you think is an area of opportunity for you, is to, on each of these deep inhales, to see if we can bring those inhales down to the bottoms of our bellies each time. Diaphragm level. The other option, and I work when I kind of lead these with different groups, I also invite folks to experiment with bringing those inhales like up to your brains, as in fueling that brain, because we know that the brain is craving that oxygen. So either way, up to the brain, down to the diaphragm level, as you said. That's what I would invite you to do as you explore the breathing. So that's category number one. The second category is all about water. Hydrating with simple water. And the brain, if you're not aware, is 80% water, which is very significant. And even mild deprivation can lead, again, to that feeling foggy, low, tired. And I invite you to think about what you are drinking throughout the day, because there's other drinks out there that can actually counter affect simple water that you might be drinking in the day. I don't know where folks are tuning in from. I'm going to speak from the perspective of the United States for the science in connection with these domains, and in particular the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. They actually don't currently have a recommended standard for how much water adults or anyone really should be drinking each day, because it does vary. It depends on how much we're sweating in a day. It depends on our climate. Are we in a hotter climate? Are we in a cooler climate? If we're sweating more in a hotter climate, that person is going to need more hydration than someone who's not, for example. I have connected with a couple of different nutritionists who don't know each other, and both of their recommendations on how much we should be drinking, a barometer that you might want to experiment with is seeing if you can maintain a pale yellow urine color as a guide. And that's, we are water. We're water essentially. And so without adequate hydration, we're going to feel the impacts of stress. And that's category number 2. So I'll pause there.
Stuff that I'm quite familiar with, but it's important for folks to recognize that these basic steps are so very important. And sometimes we are so busy and caught up with doing a whole lot of things that we forget to simply take time out to breathe. Just relax and breathe. And as Andrew said, whatever technique you find that works for you, and there's so many. I mean, I know a few myself that I practice as well. Try them and see how it can help in maintaining a more soothing kind of approach to what is happening, even though you may be faced with a situation that can bring stress. And of course, hydration is extremely important. Most of our audience are tuning in from countries that are basically tropical rainforest areas. So we know that we need to hydrate a lot. And as you say, there's no set standard from the CDC with regards to how many water we should drink. But I was once told that as an adult, I should try to get at least 2 liters of water in my system, minimum to 3 maximum per day. And for some people, that may be a lot, but it's important to also understand why we are doing the hydration. So at this time, I'd like to ask our producer to put up the video that is entitled Downtime. Let's see if we can get that up and running. Dexter, do you have it? Downtime? I'm not sure, but it is okay. All right. Play the one you had queued. Great. Let's see it.
Happy Wellness Wednesday, y'all. It is me popping in here with another little tip for you. This has to do with the power of the reframe, power of gratitude. The more that you flex these muscles in your brain, the more equipped your brain is to get through difficult situations or situations that you kind of like are stressed out about. And the example that I have to share for you today is me walking down the sidewalk recently in these city streets, and you're always on the go, go, go. I was walking to an appointment. A construction worker stops me on my track in my head. I said, ugh, he's gonna make me late. And then I took a moment and I looked up and I saw there's like a huge beam, a metal beam, and he was literally trying to protect me and, prevent damage to me. And so when the whole thing was over, he gave me the green light to go past. I literally said thank you to him. Thank you for keeping a lookout. And I felt better. He felt better. It was a win-win all around. So there you go. Keep going, y'all.
So there are two things there, Andrew, that I recognize, and that one, this may be one of the 10 foundation steps. Yeah, I thought so. And secondly, it was an opportunity to gain some level of oxytocin. So, I want you to kind of elaborate on that foundational aspect.
Yeah. So category number 3, here we go. Gratitude. And also, I just want to share that I own more than just this yellow polo shirt. That's hilarious that you picked the same video with the same exact word. But yeah, I promise I have more clothes than this, folks. Anyhow, so yeah, gratitude is the third category here that we'll talk about, and those brain parts that I mentioned to you in the beginning. Gratitude actually has a direct impact to reshaping those different brain parts to our advantage. So the more that we are grateful for people, things, I'll get into that momentarily, the more that we're able to shrink down the size of that amygdala, the more that we're able to expand again the sizes of the prefrontal cortex and that hippocampus. And yeah, gratitude again is a very simple practice. It does not take a large time commitment. All it takes is a few minutes of consistent practice each day in order for us to start seeing a difference, start seeing a change. And whenever I talk about this category, I throw out possible things that folks might be able to be grateful for, and I start off, of course, when we think about being grateful for people, we generally start thinking about our loved ones, and of course, if you do that, keep on going, keep doing it. Maybe you want to think about, maybe there's other loved ones in your life that you want to throw into the mix there. Maybe there's animals, pets in your life that you want to be grateful for. And maybe there's even the material things in life that we often take for granted. Uh, and when I'm teaching this material and giving ideas out for things to incorporate into gratitude practice, maybe if you're able to take a shower, maybe it's the running water that you're getting in that shower. If you're able to wake up in a bed with a soft pillow, maybe it's being grateful for that. If you have a refrigerator in your home, maybe being grateful for the electricity that's maintaining that, and the food that you're able to keep in that refrigerator. So the material things in life. Um, I mentioned the shirt. You saw it before, you're seeing it now. I love the color yellow, and maybe it's a color out there that you do love, that you're grateful for. And then I end by saying maybe it's being grateful and pulling things out from within yourself. So maybe it's a personality trait or a skill or a strength that you have, your gift, the gift that you bring to this world. Maybe it's something like that you want to incorporate into your gratitude practice. From a timing perspective, doesn't matter the time of day in which you might start doing this. I did work with a physician who's very much involved in resilience. I've trained with him, and he actually recommends doing this basically right when you wake up. And the two reasons that he says that is one, where when we wake up, we're generally in that brain frequency state where we're more open to expanding our mind in a way. And number two, it just, in his mind, it sets us up for, in that frame of mind for the day. So whatever might come at us later that day, where we're grounded in that gratitude practice. That's his recommendation. But he also says there's no science behind that. That's just, even if you're timing wise, you prefer to do this on your way to sleep, amazing. If the afternoon is the only opportunity for you, amazing. As long as you're doing it, the consistency is the name of the game there.
So I'm looking at a situation where we have a simple challenge, Andrew, and someone has to make certain adjustments. Let's say, for example, you have to move from one city to the next, or you have to change jobs because you got laid off or you got fired. And I guess I'm going back to a situation where after the pandemic, we had so much fallouts, so much changes that were forced upon us that we didn't ordinarily wanted to make. And there were so many different levels of stress that people went through, and so many different areas of adjustments that had to be made. How would you advise someone if that change becomes something that they have to do but they are not comfortable with? Moving to a next city, taking another job, or choosing a different career than one that they have been doing, let's say, for 15 years. How would you advise them to deal with that stressful situation?
Yeah, uh, very real stuff. Very real stuff. And so the one category that I'd like to focus on here, because I think it really touches upon um, this particular category, but it's truly from a scientific perspective. If we are optimizing all of these domains, we're going to be in a better position to manage those types of situations. The more that we do this work, the more resilient we're going to become. That that's foundational. Uh, but I guess the next category that's most applicable to that scenario or to those scenarios is what I call connection. And when I talk about connection, I'm talking about three different things. So the three different prongs in this category. Uh, One, of course, is connecting with other people, to other people. Healthy connection. We are human and we are social creatures, and our brain craves that connecting with people who we can love and trust. But there's two other prongs that I highlight here that I often that I think goes neglected oftentimes. One of them is connecting to ourselves. And what do I mean by that? Connecting to this is where that mindset piece comes in. And it's connecting to what's important to you, what are your values, and reflecting on what you might be saying to yourself in the moments where you are feeling off. And what can happen is that as I mentioned before, our brains have not yet evolved to kind of keep up with the demand of information. So what our brains are doing are truly trying to be as efficient as possible. And so our current mindset is consists of the 5% of awareness, conscious awareness that we have, and then the rest of our what we do, our habits, our thoughts, our beliefs. That's truly subconscious, and that's in the 95% of our brain, and that's in an effort for our brain to kind of keep everything moving, going. But what happens and what can happen is that we find ourselves in situations where we are feeling off because we're not connected, and we might be making decisions and taking actions in connection with an outdated mindset. And so, uh, yeah, are we making decisions? Are we taking actions for other people? Or are we taking actions for ourselves? And I don't say that selfishly. Whenever I get here, it's just like, it's so cliche, but it's truly like, if you've ever flown, every time on the air, in the airplane, the recording is, you got to put on that oxygen mask before you can help anyone else, because if you're depleted, you're not going to be able to help anyone else. And so it's truly, it's not a selfish thing. You're actually selfless, because you're thinking about what's going to fuel yourself, so that you can then continue to serve other people in the way that you do, so you can continue to be there for other people. So I think it's a very selfless act to be able to fuel your bucket. uh, and then that third prong under connection is connecting to your physical environment. And and so if you are moving to that different city, and that's a foreign city to you, uh, if this is a city that you don't particularly like, and you don't want to be there, I invite you to think about ways in which, wherever you land, whatever home you create for yourself there, how might you be able to create an environment that is representative of what you do like. Uh, and I'll throw down an example. My I live in New York City, and it's a city that I have a love-hate relationship with. And on the hate side of the house, like, I'm a beach person, right? And so I've created an apartment in New York City. I call it Beach Vibes in New York City, and it's a way for me to come home, feel like I can just, like, ground myself again, refuel myself again, chill, relax, recharge. So I invite you to think about what you might be able to do from an environmental perspective, to represent your space in the way that does represent you, in the way that you want. Um, just another fun fact about the brain: our brain does not know the difference between, like, real and fake. Uh, and so you might have heard visualization exercises. That's exactly why we do these visualization exercises, because when we're in that mode, our brain actually doesn't know the difference when we're in that moment, thinking about what we might be doing in the future when we're not actually there yet. So yeah.
The thought of the week. Every program we have a weekly thought that we share with our audience. And so it says here, perceptions are figments of our imagination, but reality needs no basis for its existence. It just exists. Let me repeat that. Perceptions are figments of our imagination, but reality needs no basis for its existence. It just exists. And I kind of like to ask my guests what they think about the thought of the week.
It resonates for me,
Uh huh.
absolutely. And it's I think it really directly connects to what I just said about how our brain. But just to kind of add into that color, 'cause I don't want to repeat myself there, but to add into that, humans, we're also like meaning making machines. We love to find meaning in things, and if we are not understanding something and we're not able to get the answers, we're going to make stuff up. We're going to create stories in our brains to kind of create that meaning for ourselves, and that meaning might not be factual. And it might be, but it might not be. And I think we need to keep ourselves open to this whole notion of, is it actually, I was thinking about the difference between capital T truth and lowercase t truth. I always think about, like, my truth is lowercase t truth, whereas, like, the big T truth, things like there are clouds in the sky, or the sky is blue, um, or like there's salt in salt water. Like, those are like big T truths. We know those things. Uh, but when I share my truth, it may not necessarily be a big T truth, and to just be aware that someone might have a different experience and different meaning in their life. That's how I'd react to that thought.
Back, Andrew. We appreciate it. So now we're gonna kind of help you with the wardrobe a little bit as we align the next video next. So we can play this one, and it has to do with timeout. Wow, so very important.
What's up there, Groovies? It's me popping in. Yeah, groovy. I want to bring that word back. I have been trying to bring that word back. And so there it is. I'm saying groovy today. I'm popping in with another little wellness tip of mine. One of the other keys that I have is time off, and that's what I'm about to do. I'm about to take some time off. Wanted to let you know that the space is going to be quiet for a bit. I'll be back on the grid on the 13th of September. So nothing is wrong. I am just going to be taking some me time, some downtime, disconnect, and just give that brain of mine a rest. And I look forward to getting back on the other side. Got some exciting things planned and look forward to reconnecting with all of you at that time. Until then, be well and be groovy and enjoy whatever time you can make for yourself as well. Till next time, bye.
Right. So I was looking at a quote by Deepak Chopra, and he said quite conclusively that many a times we find ourselves burnt out because we behave as human doers and not human being. We're always doing, and we don't realize that at times we have to take time out just to rest, relax, recharge, and come again. How important, how critical is that to the entire process of dealing with chronic stress?
I would say paramount because it is the fifth category,
Ah, there you go. There
and
you go. Yeah,
you
yeah.
set me up there, and thank you for highlighting a different shirt. I
That's
appreciate
right. That's right.
that. Rest or downtime, time off, however you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
super, super, super important. And just to kind of share some quick science uh, with you on this end is that research now shows that on average, our human brain. So our brain is not a muscle, as you may know, and unlike muscles in our bodies. So like if you're leg muscles, if you're going out for a little jog or something, or doing something with your arms, your muscles tell you in real time, or tells the brain in real time, I'm tired, I want to take a break. Because our brain is not a muscle, and because our brain is an organ, our brain actually doesn't tell itself, hang on a minute, I'm feeling tired, until it's too late. Generally speaking, when it's too late, we're just like, oh my God, I need to just like veg on the couch for hours and just crash. But the research does show that on average, it takes around approximately 90 minutes for the brain to start to fatigue after focused activity. So focused activity, 90 minutes, the brain will start to fatigue. On average, it could be sooner if the activity is more intense. And it could be longer than that as well if it's not like that much of an intense activity. And so knowing that and knowing how crazy people's lives have become and insanely busy people's lives have become, the recommendation that I have is to see how you might be able to incorporate, sprinkle in throughout the day. Again, not a lot of time is needed, a few minutes, 5 minutes, just to kind of distract your brain from what it's doing. Ideally, when you distract yourself, you're thinking about something uplifting, something positive. Maybe you're looking in your camera phone, your camera roll to see a loved one or think about a loved one or a vacation spot or anything. Maybe you're listening to a song that you really love to distract yourself. there's so many different ways and methods. But the idea is to sprinkle out a few minutes throughout the day so that you can maintain that focus and you don't have to experience that fatigue uh, before it's too late, if that makes sense. Um, and yeah, that's really the science behind the rest and why it's so important for us. And to completely agree with Deepak on that.
That it resonated with me, and it was very interesting that the manner in which he said it, because it's easy to get caught up in thinking I have to do this, I have to go there, I have to get this done, I have to meet this person, I have to be here on time, and it's just rush, rush, do.
Yeah,
But there comes a time when your entire system could say, "Hey, we can, we just can't keep up with this speed. We need to." It could crash, as you say. So
yeah.
it is important that we arrange our lives in such a way that we take time out for ourselves, me time, as you rightfully say, because you are the most priceless and important individual in your life.
Hmm.
And there are things that you have to do for yourself that other people cannot really do for you. So it starts, I think, first, Andrew, with that recognition, that sense of understanding that you have that responsibility. So chart the time, write it down, whether it's 2 times for the year, 3 times for the year, just time out. And soon I'm going to be coming up on time out and breaking out of depression, because we have been going strong for season 2 since we started. We're
Hmm.
about 6 minutes away, and I want you, Andrew, to just kind of round off, if you can quickly, some more of the key factors with regards to the foundations, the 10 foundations that you think people absolutely need to hear in dealing with chronic stress.
Yeah, yeah. So quick briefly highlight the five remaining categories, um, and then speak about one of them that I can speak on for years and years and years. And so, five remaining ones, enhancing that nutrition. 95% of our serotonin, which is a feel good hormone, is manufactured in the gut. Our gut is very intimately connected with the brain via the vagus nerve. And so if we are not optimizing our nutrition in that way, we're going to feel that impact 100% without a shadow of a doubt. Uh, I'm not going to get too much into the nutrition piece right now, but I do recommend that whether you consult with a registered dietitian or just check your the nationally reputable science resources on like what we need to be eating. I do recommend that. Number six is moving that body, exercising, physical activity. Uh, Such an important way to increase the blood flow, the oxygen to our brains. We're impacting the learning, we're impacting our memory the more that we move. And even if we are, and I've been there, even if we have physical limitations, there's always something that we can do to move our bodies. Consult with your MD, get those restrictions clarified and get clearance on what you can do. There's always something we could be doing to move our bodies. We're human and we're born to move. Uh, Next up is sleep, optimizing that sleep. We want to be getting regular, consistent, deep sleep. And what happens just very quickly in that deep sleep cycle is the glymphatic system kicks into high gear. And what that is that's our system that flushes out all of the dead neurotransmitters that have accumulated in our brain throughout the day. And if if we don't have an opportunity to if it doesn't have an opportunity to do that, it's no wonder why we wake up groggy, hitting the snooze button like 20,000 times. It's biological, it's physiological. So I invite you to think about what you might be able to do and to optimize that sleep if that's an area for you. I always say don't ignore the snore. If you do have a snore, check it out with an MD, a sleep specialist, because there could be a simple fix there, and then it could be night and day for you. Pun intended. with the night and day. Having fun, category number four. Laugh, play, channel that inner child, and do things that bring you joy. Because when we do that, we're having a direct impact to our overall stress. And then the last category that I could talk about forever is what I call honoring and releasing your emotions. Uh, and what do I mean by that? There's a whole body of science called the mind body syndrome. And so many of us have been conditioned and raised in systems and societies that don't encourage us to express how we're actually feeling. And so, what do we generally do with negative emotions? We bottle up, bottle up, bottle up. Our bodies can't take that. Over time, our bodies will overflow into those physical and emotional stress symptoms. I experienced this as well. That eyelid twitch that I referred that I before, that was all connected. I was diagnosed with MBS, and that's what got me into working with who I worked with to help me through that. Uh, but the whole goal here is creating an emotional highway without traffic, is what I say, because things and events are always going to happen. We're always going to be activated and triggered because we're human. Emotions are a part of us. It's part of the condition of being who we are. And so I honor that greatly. Acknowledge that. Acknowledge what you're experiencing, and then in as real time as possible, find out healthy ways to release what's going on. Whether you are talking to someone, whether you are journaling, whether you are singing, whether you're going out for a walk in nature, whether I've had a client who talked to a tree, and that person told me that helped. That helped me get it out of your system. So it's to just clear the path to make it trafficless, as they call it. There's a lot more in that category, but I know we're approaching time, and and just in that particular category, I do want to just underscore it can be really scary to confront these emotions, and and I just I'm sending you that compassion your way. Uh, I promise you, if you start to do this work, you're going to feel a lot more light. You're going to feel a lot more release in your systems, in your bodies.
Thank you, Andrew. You have been very informative and engaging. So much information, so much knowledge, so much nuggets. And you have heard it here, right here on Breaking Out of Depression, folks. We thank Andrew for his commitment and his time and his expertise. We're about to wrap up, but I want to again remind you of the thought for the week and just to bring you up to speed on our guests for the next episode of Breaking Out of Depression. So, Dexter, let's just run this thought of the week one more time quickly as we come to the conclusion of the episode. I want folks to see it. And it says, perceptions are figments of our imagination, but reality needs no basis for its existence. It just exists. And if I can just show us briefly a picture of our next guest, I can just share with us briefly. And her name is Dr. Kelly Bonhoff, and she's going to be coming on our next program. She has 35 years of experience as a registered nurse, licensed marriage and family therapist, and co founder of Josephine's Clinic, a nonprofit serving those who have experienced human trafficking, violence, and she unveils her own spiritual awakening in a new book entitled What's Going On with My Family, a roadmap to healing trauma, unlocking your hidden power, and remembering what is sacred. So, look for that on our next episode of Breaking Out of Depression. Dr. Kelly Bonhoff, our next guest. Until next time, this is your guest, Andy Charles, and we thank again your host, rather, Andy Charles, and our guest, Andrew O'Brien. And we're saying thank you so much for joining us here on Breaking Out of Depression. Until next time, we just say to you, stay blessed, stay loved, stay in peace, continue with God's blessings. And remember that do all that you can always to break out of depression. Bye for now, folks. Take care. God bless.
There ain't got no way, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord, no. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord, no. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord, no. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. Trouble in my way, but daily hear me say, ain't got no way, ain't got no way, ain't got no way, ain't got no way.